So West Ham may be on the verge of something special under Lopetegui. But how is he going to do it, and how important is his rebuild over the summer going to be? So this snippet here is directly from the West Ham website, and it is suggesting that Lopetegui will play a possession-based 4-3-3 formation. Revealing your hand, West Ham. You must be confident. But what's the truth here? And is there a downside to any of this? So before Wolves, after coaching at various youth levels with Spain and a forgettable 10-match spell with Rayo Vallecano, Lopetegui's second senior managerial job came with Porto, where he was given the biggest budget the club had ever given a manager at the time. His time at Porto didn't go down that well, and even with the heavy investment into the team, he couldn't get a tune out of them. So after being sacked in January, he was then surprisingly given the Spain job 5 months later, in July 2016, where he took over from the legendary coach Vicente Del Bosque. He did well at Spain, going undefeated during World Cup qualifying and utilising that preferred 4-3-3, but he was dismissed by Spain after he took the Real Madrid job before the 2018 World Cup. He only lasted 4 months in that job, with a 5-1 El Clasico defeat being the final straw. But the saving grace for his career came a year later at Sevilla, where he went on to win the Europa League after being in charge for 7 months. But again, a 4-1 defeat to Dortmund this time, and overall poor form saw him sacked. And next, of course, it was Wolves, where he did very well in the Premier League. But what we really need to talk about is the fact that when he took over at Wolves, they were bottom of the table at Christmas, and he masterminded a comfortable mid-table finish. So it sounds pretty good, but Wolves were still the bottom scorers in the Premier League in that season. So let's take a closer look at it. And a really pivotal win during his time at Wolves was the win at Everton at Goodison Park on Boxing Day in 2022. And we're going to show you why this match and the tactics that he used here are so important when it comes to West Ham. So this was the lineup on that day. It's a 4-3-3, but how it looked within the context of the game could leave West Ham fans feeling pretty excited, I think. But if we manoeuvre that 4-3-3 in its basic textbook form and put it into the average positions, it actually looks like this. Now, this may look like a confusing mess, but as we progress in this video, we're going to explain why each position is important and exciting, I think, within this tactical setup that Lopetegui clearly loves. So in terms of centre-backs and goalkeepers, the setup is pretty straightforward. Lopetegui likes defenders who can defend, but are also competent enough with the ball. And whilst they don't have to be John Stones, I think they want those players to be able to get on the ball and help with that build-up because of where the fullbacks play. And we'll show you why that's important next. So this could mean trouble for Kurt Zouma, because I'm not sure he fits into what Lopetegui necessarily wants. But for the time being, we've put Zouma in there because it's him or Mavropanos. And I guess if you think about Dawson with Wolves, it was, you know, he's a kind of proper defender, let's say, and he did well. He always does well, doesn't he, Dawson? So we've gone between him and Mavropanos. We've gone with Zouma to start with, because you're not going to fix this straight away in terms of how he wants to change it. Don't be surprised, though, if they go and buy a replacement in that position. They've also got Luizão available, but since he's left-footed, he's still behind Agüerd, who I actually really like. So the main role of the centre-backs will be to move the ball into these 3 key areas. And that's where the whole system comes to fruition. And what happens in this space is crucial in how Lopetegui's teams attack and create chances. And this screenshot here is exactly why it's important. I want to highlight 3 players here. Semedo, if I can. He's kind of hiding under here, if you can see him down the bottom. Matheus Nunes and Hwang Hee-chan. These 3 players are really important. And the reason they're important is because of the interplay and the movement between these three. And because of these triangles, these types of triangles that are so key in Lopetegui's play style. Interestingly, Wolves actually played a back 3 in this game, but they then reverted to the 4-3-3 in the second half, and you can see why it's important in this segment of play. So Matheus Nunes has the ball and he plays that pass to Semedo, who's quite high up. If you think about, being defensively strong and solid, and you think of those 2 centre-backs, they're actually a little bit exposed here, but there's a confidence and a desire to utilise these fullbacks. But why? Well, the reason is the movement of that midfielder, Matheus Nunes, not actually Semedo himself. He's almost a bit of a decoy. He's almost a bit of a pivot player for the team. Because what's important here is the body language and, importantly, the movement of Matheus Nunes. So Matheus Nunes plays that pass and he goes. And Hwang Hee-chan, as you can see in the far right of your screen, he is making that parallel movement. If we move it along one, You can see exactly what I mean. So the ball makes its way to him. And the important thing with Matheus Nunes is he makes that run behind on the blind side of the midfielder here. So you can see instead of coming this way in front of him where he can then see him, he actually makes it really difficult by going down that blind side. Semedo knows that pass is coming. Wang Hee-chan knows that he needs to come and get that ball as well in terms of being a lateral, moving the back line backwards and therefore leaving this space here for Matheus Nunes, who has gone on the blind side and is now in behind that midfield and can attack that defence and create a chance. And if we move it on one more, you can see exactly what I mean in terms of it opening up the opposition. That quick interchange, that triangle between the three of them, 1, 2, 3, has worked absolutely brilliantly there, utilising the width, getting in behind, and now all of a sudden Matheus Nunes has got the ball and is driving. And as we move it on that little bit further, you can see he's now got the opposition backpedaling. They're in trouble. You're in behind the midfield. You're in those half spaces that everyone talks about, of course. And he has now got options to play the pass, or go himself for a fwa-pa-pa-pa and try and get himself a goal. And they actually score from this action. So those triangles really, really crucial for Wolves in terms of how they utilise movement. And it's a direct style of play, but not in the air, which is, I think, is really important here for West Ham fans to be excited about. It's quite slick, it's one-touch stuff, but importantly, it puts opposition defenders in uncomfortable positions where they're backpedaling. The criticism of Lopetegui will be that this didn't happen enough at Wolves. And whilst the ideas were there, they didn't see it frequently enough. So from a West Ham perspective, this is how it could look. And this is how the triangles would mostly look like for West Ham. But I want to touch on a couple of things that I have questions about when it comes to this setup. And it doesn't utterly feel right in the gut, I'll be honest, when it comes to West Ham. But I think Lopetegui is obviously a good coach. And so you imagine that he would be able to develop the players or get in the players that he wants to make it work. Now, firstly, I really like Alvarez as a defensive midfielder. And I think he's fantastic in ball recovery. Let's highlight him, shall we? He had 4.62 tackles and interceptions per 90 last season, which speaks for itself. But the 6 in Lopetegui's system is so important to the whole side. And at Wolves, Lopetegui had Ruben Neves. And he was doing this fantastic deep-line playmaker role. And we've not seen that from Alvarez in the Premier League. But his 7.77 progressive passes per 90 at Ajax in his final season over there, I think it bodes really, really well. But time will tell on that one. My next problem is this man, Soufal. So now both fullbacks are going to be given license and they're going to be told to stay very high and engage in the attack frequently. And I'm not too sure that Soufal has that in him, getting up and down so frequently. I think it could leave him a little bit exposed. So that is a little bit of a concern. Next, we've got the biggest problem, in my opinion, and that's this man here, Paquetá, because he's actually perfect for the system. And I think he would kill it in those half spaces, given the chance. However, we don't even know if he'll be allowed to play football again next season or again full stop, which makes it obviously very hard to plan for West Ham and hurts them from a financial point of view because he is such a valuable player who you can make a lot of money on. Not in a gambling sense. You know what I mean? From a transfer. I don't mean a transfer for a bet. That's not allowed with these lads. And Man City wanted him. You know what I mean? But hey, come on. Let's talk about the positives here. Because there are 2 massive positives right here. And that's these 2. Kudus and Bowen will both be told to stay high when attacking. And their individual quality will be lent upon heavily when it comes to combining with those 2 8s in the system. And because of this, they should see themselves in a lot of scoring situations. That is if Lopetegui doesn't struggle with frequent chance creation like he did at Wolves. And we'll talk about the solution to this after we talk about the last position, striker. So at Wolves, Lopetegui had Diego Costa and Raul Jimenez and never really got the best out of either of them from a scoring perspective. Costa only scored 1 goal during his time at Wolves, but we're going to break it down and show you the key principles of a Lopetegui striker and what it means for West Ham. So here we have Diego Costa with his back to goal, and that's an important part of the striker role in Lopetegui's system. And actually the movement of Sarabia is really interesting as well, because you can see he is on his bike. Norgard is struggling here, but it's because Sarabia knows exactly what he's got to do, because Diego Costa is looking to suck in those players as that hold-up man, and therefore that space in behind is there, and there is no one else taking players away and allowing, for example, this player here to have to think about Sarabia as much as Diego Costa, who is going away from the goal and therefore he feels is less of a danger. And the importance of this from Sarabia is that Lopetegui's sides will go direct at times, and a big striker is obviously key to that. So moving from back to goal and transitioning into attack is also really, really important as a part of their tactical approach, as it again takes advantage of a disjointed backline and again targets backpedaling defenders, as I've just shown you there. And if we follow this passage of play, it's very interesting in how direct, but again, the ball is on the floor. So let's move it forward. As I said, you've got a player here, a defender here, who's concerned with Sarabia's movement. And Costa knows that as well. And he's a good target man. And so if we move it along one more, what we see is that Diego Costa actually is able to turn with the ball. He's able to turn out to his right because that defender that we were talking about has had to follow Sarabia. Now, Sarabia wants to get on the ball, but we'll get there. And, of course, let's look at the timings, actually, with this. It's really interesting as well because, look, we've got 26.44. 4 seconds later, as we said, there's that curled run from Diego Costa. Instead of just playing the ball backwards, he's actually utilised the space that's there, again, because they've gone direct, and therefore he knows that this space is all here for him. And he also knows, he's seen it, Sarabia is moving that way, that's taking that defender that way as well. But as we move it along, he then looks to attack that space, but Wolves themselves are looking to get bodies forward, and he's looking to utilise the width of the pitch and play a pass out wide. Let's move it on one more, and you will see that once he's made that movement, a striker wants to get on the ball. Can you turn into space with these defenders all backpedaling, as we've spoken about, something that Lopetegui likes to see, to stretch it, to get them backpedaling, and therefore not having the structure that they want to have. And then, of course, importantly, you've got to have those wide players high up the pitch to go and help you. And that's what Diego Costa does. He's able to play that pass high up, and we keep moving it forward. This is all very quickly done. And so within 9 seconds, the ball has gone into Diego Costa's feet, and now we've got a cross that's come in, and you've still got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the way, and a very, very sort of exposed situation for the defensive side as well. So that emphasis on the switch is to move the ball to that wide area so they can take advantage of the space and put in that percentage ball into the box. Now, sadly, there are still some unanswered questions, though, that we've alluded to at times during the video, and we're about to talk about them right now. And we're going to talk about this image that we spoke about earlier and how it can look from a West Ham perspective. Whilst we answer those questions, for the time being, we're going to put Antonio in as the striker. If you think about the work that Diego Costa did, being able to hold up the ball, being able to turn with the ball, being able to drive with the ball and play a simple pass and then get yourself in the box, Antonio is fully capable of that. And so actually, I know, look, he's a little bit older, whatever, I still like him and I think he's got a lot to offer. But I would say in the transfer window, that is going to be a key area to look to address in terms of thinking about the future and the present as well. So this is how I expect it to look now. And what I must say and apologise for is that I previously had Zuma this side and Agurd this side. It would be the other way around. So if you've written a comment about that, then feel free to leave it up there. But I apologise again. I've spotted it. I spotted that mistake. And mistakes happen. Okay. Now, one player that I expect big things from is Emerson. Because Nuri and Juego Bueno was muy bueno. And both thrived under Lopetegui. Soufal on the other side, though, not really sure. Antonio will likely be dropping pretty deep to be that backboard in central areas and to provide simple progressive passing options for his teammates. Meanwhile, expect James Ward-Prowse to be knitting things together on that right-hand side. I think Ward-Prowse in this position could be really useful, and I think he can get forward into those half spaces and deliver those sort of KDB-style crosses to the back post. But this may not be possible with Bowen expected to take up similar positions, so that's where I feel a bit unsure about it as well. He's not actually the biggest sort of dribbler, obviously, because his superpower when it comes to Ward-Prowse is passing. And so will it totally suit him as well? And it might be one where you want someone to be able to drive with the ball that little bit more. That's why Paquetá would be so impressive in this. And my worry is that this team has some holes in it that don't align with what Lopetegui wants to do. And they will need new faces to fix this. But the good news is that it looks like some are on their way. It's also very believable that West Ham will go big in the summer because Lopetegui wouldn't be there if it wasn't the case. And you can see that in how he left Wolves. So with the young Brazilian players, Luis Guilherme and Vital coming in, there is a lot to be excited about, but a lot of pressure on them to hit the ground running because that's where the majority of the funds are going. However, if they manage to seal a deal for Silva Jota, they'll have yet another exciting winger on their hands, which adds much needed depth in those areas of the pitch. But I think the biggest pursuit has to be a striker. Do that, and they could get Europe. Without one, it worries me. And I think with that 50-50 split, maybe a bit more when it comes to David Moyes sort of leaving, I think the press will be on that. So it's going to be on the West Ham fans to really stick with Lopetegui if it doesn't start as well as they would like.